Alex Carter had always been proud of his beliefs. The 16-year-old high school junior wasn't shy about showing his support for what he thought was right, even when it wasn't popular. One crisp Monday morning, Alex decided to wear his red MAGA hat to school. To him, it wasn't just a hat. It was a symbol of his freedom to express himself. However, Principal Linda Grant didn't see it that way. Known for her strict policies against anything she deemed divisive, Linda confronted Alex the moment she saw him in the hallway. "Remove the hat, Alex, or face the consequences," she said firmly. But Alex stood his ground, calmly reminding her of his rights. This led to a heated exchange that ended with Alex being suspended for 3 days. What Linda didn't know was that Alex's father, Charles Carter, wasn't just any concerned parent. He was the chair of the school board, and when Charles found out about the suspension, he was determined to stand by his son and teach the school a lesson about free speech. Before we dive into this story of courage, integrity, and unexpected twists, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories that challenge injustice and celebrate standing up for what's right. Alex Carter had always been a fiercely independent teenager, the kind of young man who wasn't afraid to speak his mind, even when it meant standing alone. Growing up in a household that valued personal responsibility, integrity, and free speech, Alex learned from his father, Charles Carter, that principles mattered more than popularity. Charles, a respected businessman and chair of the local school board, often discussed current events with Alex, encouraging him to think critically and stand firm in his beliefs. It was this upbringing that gave Alex the confidence to wear his red MAGA hat to Liberty High School one Monday morning. For Alex, the hat wasn't about creating conflict. It was about proudly expressing his values and the lessons his father had taught him. He knew that not everyone at school would agree with his choice, especially in a district known for its progressive leanings. But Alex believed in his constitutional right to free speech and wasn't willing to hide his beliefs to avoid potential backlash. When Alex entered the school building, his presence immediately caused a stir. Students in the hallways exchanged glances, some whispering and pointing at the bright red cap. It wasn't the first time Alex had expressed his conservative views, but the MAGA hat was a bold statement, even for him. By the time he reached his locker, word of his accessory had already spread. Principal Linda Grant was a firm believer in fostering what she called a safe and inclusive environment, though many students and parents felt her policies often silenced differing opinions. When Linda heard about Alex's hat from a student, she wasted no time addressing the situation. Spotting him in the hallway, she approached with an air of authority. "Alex, can I speak with you for a moment?" she said, her tone sharp and unyielding. Alex turned to face her, standing tall. "Yes, Principal Grant?" Linda gestured toward the hat. "I'm going to need you to remove that hat. It's disruptive and goes against our school's policies on maintaining a respectful and neutral environment." Alex's expression remained calm but resolute. "With all due respect, Principal Grant, this hat is an expression of my beliefs. I'm not violating the dress code and I have a right to wear it." Linda's brow furrowed, her frustration evident. "That hat represents divisive politics, Alex. It's causing a distraction among your peers, and I won't allow it." Alex didn't flinch. Respectfully, the Supreme Court has ruled that students don't lose their free speech rights at school. "I'm not trying to distract anyone. I'm just wearing a hat." The tension in the hallway was palpable as students gathered at a distance, watching the standoff. Linda, sensing her authority was being challenged, folded her arms. "Alex, I'm giving you one last chance to take it off, or you'll face disciplinary action." Alex hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. He knew the consequences could be serious, but he also knew he couldn't back down without compromising his principles. "I'm sorry, Principal Grant, but I won't take it off." True to her word, Linda issued a suspension on the spot, instructing Alex to leave the premises immediately. As Alex walked out of the school, the whispers and murmurs of his classmates followed him. Some admired his courage, while others condemned his defiance. Later that evening, Alex sat at the dinner table with his parents, recounting the day's events. Charles listened intently, his jaw tightening as Alex described the confrontation. "She suspended you for wearing a hat?" Charles asked, his tone incredulous. Alex nodded. She said it was divisive and distracting. I told her I wasn't breaking any rules, but she wouldn't listen. Charles leaned back in his chair, his expression a mix of frustration and determination. This isn't just about the hat, Alex. It's about your rights. If the school is willing to punish you for expressing your beliefs, then they're violating your freedom of speech. Alex's mother, Sarah, placed a reassuring hand on her son's shoulder. You did the right thing, honey. We're proud of you for standing up for what you believe in. Charles nodded in agreement. We're not going to let this slide. As chair of the school board, I have a responsibility to ensure that every student's rights are protected. Principal Grant has overstepped her authority, and we're going to address this. The next morning, Charles drafted an official request for a meeting with the school board, outlining the details of Alex's suspension and the potential violation of his constitutional rights. He also reached out to other parents in the community, many of whom shared his concerns about the growing restrictions on free speech at the school. Meanwhile, Alex's story began to spread on social media, sparking a heated debate. Some praised him for standing up to authority, while others sided with Linda, arguing that symbols like the MAGA hat had no place in a school environment. As the controversy gained momentum, Charles prepared for what would become a pivotal moment, not just for Alex, but for the entire school community. The Carter family had no idea how far-reaching the consequences of this battle would be, but they were ready to stand firm in their beliefs, no matter the cost. The suspension of Alex Carter for wearing his MAGA hat sent shockwaves through the school and the broader community. The incident rapidly grew into a polarizing topic of discussion, fueled by both personal grievances and broader political undertones. Principal Linda Grant, steadfast in her decision, believed she had done what was necessary to maintain harmony within Liberty High School. However, she was unprepared for the backlash that would follow. Linda wasted no time in drafting a formal report for the upcoming school board meeting. Her account focused on the disruptive nature of Alex's actions, citing complaints from a handful of students who claimed the MAGA hat made them feel uncomfortable. She included a statement emphasizing her commitment to creating an inclusive and distraction-free environment, arguing that her decision was in the best interest of the student body. Meanwhile, Alex's suspension letter began circulating on social media, courtesy of classmates who supported his stance. The narrative took on a life of its own. Supporters hailed Alex as a young advocate for free speech, while detractors labeled him a provocateur. Alex, for his part, remained quiet, focusing on his schoolwork from home and allowing his father to lead the charge. Charles Carter, both furious and methodical, prepared for the upcoming school board meeting. He reviewed the school's policies meticulously, noting the lack of any rule prohibiting political symbols like the MAGA hat. As the chair of the board, Charles knew this battle wasn't just about his son. It was about setting a precedent for the protection of students' rights. Linda, meanwhile, was facing internal challenges. The school's faculty were divided on the issue, with some teachers privately supporting Alex's right to free speech, while others backed Linda's decision. The whispers of discontent among her staff added another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. On the day of the school board meeting, Charles arrived early, armed with evidence and a calm but firm resolve. He greeted fellow board members, careful not to let his personal connection to the case cloud his professionalism. The atmosphere in the room was tense. Parents, students, and community members packed the audience, eager to witness the confrontation. Linda's presentation came first. She outlined her rationale, reiterating that the MAGA hat represented divisive politics and disrupted the school's harmony. My responsibility is to ensure that every student feels safe and included, Linda said, her voice steady. Allowing political symbols in the classroom sets a dangerous precedent. This is about maintaining a learning environment, not silencing anyone. Charles waited patiently for his turn to speak, his demeanor calm but his gaze unwavering. When he finally rose, he began by highlighting the school's own code of conduct, pointing out that Alex had not violated any rules. The issue here is not about creating a safe environment. It's about the overreach of authority and the infringement on my son's constitutional rights, he said, his voice measured but firm. The First Amendment protects freedom of speech, and that includes political expression. The room fell silent as Charles continued, addressing both the board and the community. We cannot allow personal biases to dictate school policy. If we silence one viewpoint, we set a dangerous precedent for silencing others. Today it's a MAGA hat. Tomorrow it could be a pride flag or a Black Lives Matter shirt. Where do we draw the line? Linda, visibly uncomfortable, interjected. Charles, this is not about bias. It's about maintaining order and preventing divisiveness. Charles turned to face her directly. Linda, maintaining order does not mean suppressing individual freedoms. Schools should teach students to engage in dialogue, not stifle it. Alex's hat was not disruptive until you made it an issue. As murmurs rippled through the audience, the debate intensified. Supporters of Alex cheered Charles's defense, while others questioned whether political symbols belonged in schools at all. The board members, caught in the crossfire, listened intently, aware of the weight their decision carried. Amid the public fallout, Linda's leadership came under scrutiny. Reports surfaced of other instances where students felt their voices had been stifled under her administration. These revelations cast doubt on her claim of impartiality, fueling calls for an investigation into the school's policies and practices. Outside the meeting, reporters and community members engaged in heated debates. Alex, who had accompanied his father to the meeting but remained silent during the proceedings, stood off to the side, observing the unfolding drama. For him, this wasn't about being a hero or a symbol, it was about standing up for what he believed in. By the end of the evening, the board announced they would review the incident further before making a final decision. However, the damage had been done. Linda's report, intended to justify her actions, had only deepened the divide, drawing more attention to the controversy and setting the stage for an even greater battle ahead. As Charles and Alex left the meeting, they were approached by a group of students and parents who voiced their support. "You've started something important," one parent said. "Thank you for standing up for our kids." Alex looked up at his father, seeing the determination in his eyes. This fight wasn't over, but for the first time, Alex felt the power of his voice. The fallout from Alex's suspension sent ripples through the Liberty High School community and beyond. The initial controversy, contained to the school board meeting, quickly expanded as news outlets picked up the story. Social media platforms buzzed with debates about freedom of expression, authority in schools, and the role of personal bias in administrative decisions. For Principal Linda Grant, the walls seemed to be closing in. In the days following the meeting, Liberty High became a flashpoint for the community. Parents who had previously supported Linda began questioning her judgment. Calls for transparency poured into the school district, with many demanding a review of Linda's leadership. Meanwhile, students organized protests, wearing hats of all kinds to school in solidarity with Alex. Some wore MAGA hats, while others sported symbols from opposite sides of the political spectrum. Emphasizing the importance of free expression, Linda found herself inundated with angry emails and calls, both supporting and condemning her decision. Some parents expressed outrage, accusing her of fostering division instead of unity. Others praised her for taking a stand against what they saw as a harmful symbol. The local news covered the controversy extensively, further polarizing opinions. One evening, as Linda sat at her desk, her assistant, Rachel, knocked lightly before stepping into the room. "Principal Grant, there are reporters outside again," Rachel said hesitantly. "They're asking for a comment about the protests." Linda sighed, her exhaustion evident. "Tell them I have no comment. I need to focus on the students, not the media circus," she replied, her tone sharper than intended. Rachel hesitated before leaving. "The staff is also asking if there will be a meeting about all this. Some of them are concerned about the school's reputation." Linda waved her off, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "Tell them we'll address it later." Inside the school, tensions continued to mount. The student body was divided, with some supporting Alex and others siding with Linda. Teachers struggled to maintain order as debates spilled into classrooms, disrupting lessons. In one particularly heated moment, a teacher named Mr. Klein, known for his balanced approach, intervened when students began arguing during a discussion about current events. All right, everyone, that's enough, Mr. Klein said firmly. This classroom is for learning, not shouting matches. If you want to discuss this respectfully, I'll give you time after the lesson. Outside of class, Alex's peers rallied around him, organizing a campaign to support his cause. Posters reading "Free Speech Matters" appeared in the hallways, and students used social media to amplify their message. Alex, initially hesitant to become the center of attention, found himself thrust into a leadership role. During lunch, Alex's best friend, Jake, approached him with a stack of flyers. "We're passing these out after school," Jake said. "It's a petition to get Linda to lift the suspension and apologize." Alex took the flyers, his expression uncertain. "I don't know, Jake. I didn't want this to turn into such a big deal. I just wanted to wear my hat." Jake placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. "This is bigger than the hat, man. It's about standing up for what's right." Meanwhile, Linda's relationship with her staff grew increasingly strained. During a staff meeting, teachers voiced their concerns about the escalating situation. "Linda," said Mrs. Harper, the history teacher, "I understand where you were coming from, but this has gotten out of hand. The students are more divided than ever, and the media attention is hurting the school's reputation." Linda's jaw tightened. "I made the decision I believed was best for maintaining order. This isn't about politics, it's about ensuring a safe and inclusive environment." Mr. Klein spoke up next. "But at what cost? By singling Alex out, we've created a larger issue. Students don't feel heard, and the faculty is losing faith in the administration." Linda's frustration boiled over. "I am the principal, and my decisions are final. If you have a problem with how I run this school, you can take it up with the board." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Linda's authoritative stance alienated her staff further, leaving her increasingly isolated. As protests continued within the school, social media platforms amplified the conflict. Hashtags like "Support Alex" and hashtag "Free Speech at Liberty" trended locally, drawing attention from national commentators. Conservative influencers championed Alex as a symbol of resistance against overreach, while progressive voices defended Linda's decision, framing it as a stand against divisive symbols. Charles Carter watched the online debates unfold with a mix of concern and determination. Though he had refrained from engaging publicly, he knew the situation was spiraling out of control. He reached out to key community members, organizing a town hall to address the growing unrest. At home, Linda faced mounting stress. Her teenage daughter Emma had been caught in the crossfire at school, where her peers questioned her mother's actions. "Mom, why did you have to suspend Alex?" Emma asked one evening, her tone a mix of frustration and curiosity. "Now everyone's talking about it, and they keep asking me whose side I'm on." Linda sighed, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Emma, I did what I thought was right. Sometimes leadership means making tough decisions." "But what if you were wrong?" Emma pressed. "What if this just made things worse?" Linda didn't have an answer. The doubt that had been creeping into her mind grew stronger, but her pride wouldn't let her admit it. Charles, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to prepare for the upcoming school board meeting. He met with lawyers, reviewed the school's policies again, and gathered testimonials from parents and students. His goal was clear: to hold Linda accountable and ensure that such overreach wouldn't happen again. One evening, as Alex joined him in his home office, Charles looked up from his stack of papers. "You doing okay, buddy?" he asked. Alex nodded. "Yeah, but it's weird. Everyone's looking at me like I'm some kind of hero or villain." Charles smiled reassuringly. "You're just standing up for what you believe in, and that's what matters. This fight isn't just about you. It's about making sure no one else has to go through this." As the school board meeting approached, the stakes grew higher. The community's divisions, the faculty's discontent, and Linda's increasingly precarious position all set the stage for a confrontation that would determine the future of Liberty High. The school board meeting was set to be a pivotal moment, and Liberty High was buzzing with anticipation. Students, parents, and teachers knew that the meeting would either vindicate Principal Linda Grant or confirm her critics' accusations. The stakes were high, and everyone involved felt the weight of what was coming. Linda spent the days leading up to the meeting trying to gather support. She reached out to her allies on the board and prepared a detailed defense of her actions. In her mind, she still believed that her decision to suspend Alex had been the right one. Yet, doubts gnawed at the edges of her conviction. The protests, the staff's dissent, and even her daughter's questions had shaken her confidence. Charles, on the other hand, had been working tirelessly to prepare his case. He had enlisted the help of Alex's teachers, who had spoken out against Linda's decision. He had also compiled testimonials from parents who supported Alex's stand for free expression. The evidence was mounting, and Charles knew they had a strong case. However, the personal toll of the conflict was becoming apparent in his household. One evening, Alex approached his father in the living room, where Charles sat reviewing his notes. "Dad," Alex began hesitantly, "do you think all of this is worth it? I mean, it feels like it's gone way beyond just me and my hat." Charles looked up, his expression thoughtful. "I know it seems like a lot, Alex, but this is about more than just you. This is about standing up for what's right. If we don't challenge this, what's to stop it from happening to someone else?" Alex nodded, but his brow remained furrowed. "I get that, but I never wanted to be in the spotlight like this. Everyone's looking at me like I'm supposed to represent something bigger, and it's overwhelming." Charles leaned forward, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "I understand, son, and I want you to know that you don't have to carry this alone. We're in this together, as a family." The evening before the meeting, Linda held a private meeting with the district's superintendent. She was visibly tense as she entered the office, her carefully prepared arguments tucked into a folder. The superintendent, a calm but firm man named Mr. Wallace, listened as Linda presented her case. She spoke about the need for inclusivity, the challenges of managing a diverse student body, and the importance of setting boundaries for what symbols could be displayed in a school setting. When she finished, Mr. Wallace leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Linda," he began, "I appreciate your commitment to maintaining a positive environment at Liberty High. But this situation has spiraled out of control. Your actions have not only divided the school, but also the community. The board will want to know why this decision was made and how you plan to address the fallout." Linda swallowed hard, realizing that her position was more precarious than she had thought. "I believe I did what was necessary," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I'll address the board and the community as best as I can." The day of the meeting arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The school board auditorium was packed with students, parents, teachers, and community members. Reporters from local news outlets lined the back wall, their cameras and microphones ready to capture every moment. Alex sat beside his father, his mother, and his younger sister. He felt a mix of nervousness and determination. He had never spoken at an event like this before, but Charles had encouraged him to share his perspective with the board. "Just speak from the heart," Charles had told him. "You don't need to have all the answers. Just tell your story." Linda arrived with her assistant, Rachel, who gave her a supportive pat on the back as they entered the auditorium. Linda scanned the crowd, her eyes briefly meeting Charles's before moving on. She could feel the tension in the room and steeled herself for what was to come. The meeting began with the usual procedural formalities, but it wasn't long before the issue of Alex's suspension was brought to the floor. Charles was the first to speak, presenting a well-organized argument that emphasized the importance of free expression and the need for administrators to remain impartial in enforcing school policies. He highlighted inconsistencies in Linda's decision-making and pointed out that the school's own guidelines did not explicitly prohibit political symbols like Alex's hat. "This isn't just about a hat," Charles concluded, his voice steady and clear. "This is about ensuring that our schools remain places where students can express themselves freely without fear of being punished for their beliefs." The room erupted into applause, and Charles took his seat, giving Alex an encouraging nod. Alex stood up next, his hands shaking slightly as he approached the podium. He took a deep breath before speaking. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Alex began, his voice soft but gaining strength as he continued. "I wore my hat because it represents something I believe in. I never thought it would lead to all of this, but what I've learned is that standing up for what you believe in isn't always easy. Sometimes it means facing consequences, even when you don't think you've done anything wrong. Linda watched from her seat, her expression a mix of frustration and something she couldn't quite identify. Hearing Alex speak so calmly and sincerely made her question whether she had misjudged him. When it was Linda's turn to address the board, she walked to the podium with her prepared notes in hand. She spoke about her commitment to fostering a safe and inclusive environment at Liberty High, reiterating her belief that certain symbols could disrupt that environment. But as she spoke, she could sense that her words weren't landing the way she had hoped. The board members' expressions ranged from skeptical to outright disapproving. Linda's voice faltered slightly as she continued, but she pressed on, determined to defend her actions. After several hours of discussion, testimony, and debate, the board adjourned to deliberate. The room buzzed with speculation as everyone waited for the decision. Alex sat with his family, his nerves on edge. Linda sat alone, her assistant having left earlier in the evening. Finally, the board reconvened. The chairperson, a composed woman in her 50s, addressed the room. After careful consideration, we have concluded that the suspension of Alex Carter was not consistent with district policies and was an overreach of administrative authority. We are therefore reinstating Alex's record and recommending that Principal Grant undergo additional training on policy enforcement and conflict resolution. The room erupted in applause, and Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. Charles squeezed his shoulder, pride evident in his expression. Linda, on the other hand, felt a sinking sensation in her chest. She had been publicly rebuked, and her authority had been called into question. As the crowd began to disperse, Charles approached Linda, extending a hand. "No hard feelings," he said, his tone measured. Linda hesitated before shaking his hand, her pride preventing her from saying much. "This isn't over," she replied quietly, more to herself than to him. The meeting marked a turning point for everyone involved. For Alex, it was a victory not just for himself, but for the principles he believed in. For Linda, it was a humbling reminder that leadership required more than conviction. It required accountability. And for Charles, it was a testament to the power of standing up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. The meeting was set to take place 2 weeks after the school board's initial decision to reinstate Alex and recommend policy training for Principal Linda Grant. However, the uproar following the board meeting had continued to escalate. Parents were divided, the media had taken a keen interest, and whispers about a more severe response to Linda's actions swirled through the school district. Linda sat at her desk in the principal's office, staring blankly at the stacks of paperwork she had once navigated so effortlessly. For years, she had thrived in her role as an educator and administrator, believing she had the vision and passion to lead a diverse student body. But now it seemed as though her very career hung by a thread. "Principal Grant," her assistant Rachel said hesitantly as she knocked on the office door, "the district superintendent just sent over an email. They're asking you to attend the next meeting of the expanded school board. It looks like it's about Alex Carter." Linda's heart sank, though she tried to maintain her composure. "Thank you, Rachel. Please let me know if there are any other updates," she replied, keeping her tone steady. When Rachel left, Linda let out a long breath, rubbing her temples. The school board's decision had already been humiliating, but this felt like the end. On the other side of town, the Carter household buzzed with nervous energy. Charles had spent the past few days reviewing notes and preparing for the upcoming meeting, determined to ensure Linda's actions would not be swept under the rug. Despite his outward calm, Alex could sense his father's resolve. They had won the first battle, but Charles was clearly gearing up for the final confrontation. "Dad, do you think they're going to fire her?" Alex asked one evening as they sat at the kitchen table. Charles glanced up from his laptop, his expression thoughtful. "That's not for us to decide, Alex," he said carefully. "But I do think it's important that the board understands the full impact of her actions, not just on you, but on the school and the community." Alex nodded, though he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. As much as he had been hurt by Linda's decision, he also saw the toll the situation had taken on her. Still, he knew his father was right. This was about more than one person. It was about principle. The day of the expanded board meeting arrived, and once again, the auditorium was packed. This time, the stakes felt even higher. Linda arrived early, dressed impeccably, and carrying a folder of prepared remarks. She knew this could be her last chance to salvage her career, and she wasn't going down without a fight. Charles and Alex entered shortly after, greeted by supportive nods and handshakes from parents and teachers who had taken their side. As they took their seats, Alex glanced around the room, his stomach twisting with nerves. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he hoped the meeting would bring some resolution. The meeting began with statements from the superintendent and the school board chair, both of whom emphasized the need for transparency and accountability in addressing the controversy. Charles was then invited to speak, and he approached the podium with the calm confidence that had become his trademark. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady but firm. "I'm here tonight not just as a parent, but as someone who believes deeply in the values of fairness and free expression. When my son Alex was suspended for wearing a hat that reflected his beliefs, it wasn't just an overreach of authority, it was a violation of the very principles our schools are meant to uphold." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "This isn't about politics. This isn't about who's right or wrong in the larger cultural debates we face as a nation. This is about ensuring that every student, no matter their background or beliefs, feels safe and respected in our schools." The room erupted in applause, and Charles returned to his seat, giving Alex a reassuring smile. Alex felt a swell of pride for his father, though his nerves remained as Linda was called to the podium next. Linda took a deep breath as she approached the microphone, her prepared remarks trembling slightly in her hands. "Good evening," she began, her voice wavering. "I want to start by acknowledging the pain and division that this situation has caused. That was never my intention. As an educator, my goal has always been to create a safe and inclusive environment for all students." She paused, glancing at the crowd, many of whom watched her with skepticism. "When I made the decision to suspend Alex, I believed I was acting in the best interests of the school. But I now realize that my actions may have been misguided. I underestimated the impact of my decision, and for that, I am truly sorry." The room was silent as Linda continued, her voice growing stronger. "I know that words alone cannot undo the harm that has been done. I also know that this experience has revealed areas where I need to grow as a leader. If given the chance, I am committed to learning from this and doing better in the future." Linda returned to her seat, her hands trembling as she clasped them tightly in her lap. She had said everything she could, but the outcome was no longer in her control. After hours of testimony, debate, and deliberation, the board reconvened to deliver their decision. The chairperson addressed the room, her expression solemn. "After reviewing all evidence and testimony, the board has determined that Principal Linda Grant's actions were inconsistent with district policies and have caused significant harm to the school community. As such, we have accepted her resignation, effective immediately." A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by murmurs of both approval and sympathy. Linda sat frozen, her face pale as the weight of the decision sank in. She had known this was a possibility, but hearing it spoken aloud felt like a punch to the gut. As the meeting adjourned, Linda quietly gathered her things and slipped out of the auditorium, avoiding the eyes of the crowd. Outside, she paused for a moment, taking a deep breath as the cool night air hit her face. She had lost her job, but in some strange way she also felt a sense of relief. The fight was over, and now she could focus on finding a new path forward. Inside the auditorium, Charles and Alex were surrounded by friends and supporters, many of whom congratulated them on the outcome. But as the crowd thinned, Alex turned to his father, his expression pensive. "Do you think she'll be okay?" he asked quietly. Charles placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his gaze thoughtful. "I think she'll find her way," he said. "Sometimes, losing something makes you realize what you need to change. Maybe this will be a turning point for her." As they left the auditorium that night, Alex felt a mixture of relief and reflection. The fight had been exhausting, but it had also taught him the importance of standing up for what he believed in. And as he walked beside his father, he felt a newfound respect for the values they had fought to defend. values that he now knew were worth every challenge they had faced. The events surrounding Alex's suspension and the subsequent fallout left an indelible mark on everyone involved, from the students and faculty at Ridgeway High School to the larger community and school board. The controversy became a moment of reflection and growth, not just for Principal Linda Grant, but for Alex, his father Charles, and those who followed the story closely. For Alex, the journey was a lesson in courage and integrity. Despite being targeted for his beliefs, he learned the power of standing firm in his convictions while handling conflict with dignity. The experience strengthened his bond with his father, whose leadership and unwavering support showed Alex how to navigate challenges with grace and resilience. By the time the media attention died down, Alex had returned to school as a symbol of free expression and mutual respect. Linda's resignation marked a turning point in her life. While the decision to step down was painful, it forced her to confront the biases that had led to her actions. In the months following her departure, Linda sought opportunities to grow and rebuild her career, enrolling in training programs focused on inclusive leadership and conflict resolution. She later admitted that while losing her position had been devastating, it had also opened her eyes to the importance of listening and learning from others' perspectives. The broader school community took away lessons of its own. The board implemented new policies aimed at fostering open dialogue and ensuring that staff members received better training on handling sensitive issues. These changes, though born out of controversy, helped create a more supportive and understanding environment for students and teachers alike. As for Charles, the experience deepened his commitment to ensuring that schools remain places where all students feel valued and empowered to express themselves. He worked closely with the board to implement initiatives that emphasized respect for differing viewpoints, believing that education should be a unifying force, not a divisive one. Months later, during a quiet family dinner, Charles asked Alex, "What did you take away from all this?" Alex paused, thinking, that standing up for yourself isn't just about proving you're right. It's about making sure everyone has a chance to be heard, and maybe even helping others see things differently. Charles smiled, proud of the maturity his son had shown throughout the ordeal. "That's a lesson a lot of adults still need to learn," he said. In the end, the events at Ridgeway High School served as a reminder of the challenges and rewards of living in a diverse society. They showed that while disagreements and mistakes are inevitable, they can also be opportunities for growth and understanding. For Alex and his family, the experience reinforced the values they held dear, leaving them stronger and more united than ever. Before we go, let us know, have you ever stood up for something you believed in, even when it wasn't easy? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more thought-provoking tales like this one.